Hi there, welcome to the archives. So it's been so long since I've done a video. I think it's been 2 months. I still have a few more videos that I recorded a couple months ago that I am going to share. But I thought I'd pop by today and do a video on Octavia Butler, which I promised to do, and I haven't done yet. So I'm going to quickly record it. This is just a reading from my PhD dissertation. You would find this in the Theoretical Frameworks and Methods chapter is where I'm reading this from. And so today's blog is called Who is Octavia Butler? So Octavia E. Butler was a Black African-American lesbian science fiction genius and the first Black woman to win the Hugo and Nebula Awards for science fiction. So for those who don't know, a year ago I defended my dissertation on June 22nd, which is Octavia Butler's birthday, and during my thesis defense, no, not my thesis, during my PhD defense, I had two of my uncles and one of my aunties on the call. And one of my uncles was telling me that my other uncle had never heard of Octavia Butler before. And yeah, people haven't heard of her. I think the fact that she was a lesbian has a huge part of it to do with it, especially for among conservatives or religious folks. Even if you're like an atheist or not a practicing individual, the fact that she was a Black woman or a Black person, an African American, and a science fiction writer, and also because she was a lesbian, that makes it. I didn't hear about Octavia Butler's, and obviously precisely for some of those reasons, right? If you are from a faith-based household where religion teaches you that lesbianity or any of that kind of stuff is bad or demonic or negative, they're not gonna feed you her books. And so folks don't know about Octavia Butler. I didn't know about Octavia Butler until my adult life. And so those are some of the reasons why you might not know about her. She was a Gemini. Like I said, she was born on June 22nd in the late 40s. She was born in Pasadena, California. And she passed away on February 24th, 2006 in Seattle, Washington, in her home where she lived. She was 58 years old when she passed away, and she fell outside of her home. So in what was one of her last television interviews before she died, this was filmed in November of 2005, and it was an interview she did with Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez of Democracy Now! I hope you follow Democracy Now! Their stuff, their work is really good. Butler, in the interview with Amy Goodman and Juan Gonzalez, she shared that as a little girl, she had gone into writing after she watched, she called it a bad movie, but the movie was called Devil Girl from Mars, and she decided to go in competition with it because she thought that she could write better. She was only 12 years old at the time, and she went and wrote her own version. And so she expressed that writing gave me the chance to comment on every aspect of humanity. People tend to think of science fiction as, oh, Star Wars or Star Trek, and that is true. There is no closed doors and there are no required formulas. You can go anywhere with it. This is what she said in her interview. And anywhere she went. So historically, science fiction has not always been taken seriously as high art and has been devalued in literature as a lesser genre. When you think about novels that sell, at least back then, when she was writing, it was not science fiction, it was not taken seriously. Stephanie Smith, in 2007, suggested that it was the feminist and Black class movement of the 50s and the 60s that contributed to the diversification and the appreciation of sci-fi, which had up until then remained a largely male-dominated field, right? I would also ask that a lot of the queer movements as well, too, contributed to that, which is what Octavia Butler did as a queer woman or a queer person. So in this regard, Octavia Butler was instrumental in situating the Black experience within sci-fi. She paved the way for Black women. Stephanie Smith goes on and says that Butler was the only prominent popular female African American and decidedly feminist voice in a historically white domain. You can find that quote on page 385 of their work. So to this day, her work is world-renowned and has been taken up by activists and scholars in Afrofuturism and critical race theory. Pay attention; these are words again that a lot of people don't like, or at least where I grew up and how I grew up. These are words that right now they're not liking. Like critical race theory, yeah, right, they're banning it. Black feminist theory, they can't wait. They're already doing that. They can't wait to get rid of it. Queer theory, oh my God, they're just foaming at the mouth to get rid of it. Disability justice, eugenics. I was just reading an article on eugenics yesterday, and Darwin's cousin over there, the godfather of eugenics, they hate these things. Like they just like they would have hated Octavia Butler. It is well documented that Butler identified as a feminist. Oh my God, do you see why they hate her? A feminist? Yeah, right. And she's black and she's queer. Why would you like? She would be banned. She was banned. Like you, I wouldn't. No, they're not. The mainstream is not feeding Octavia Butler. Maybe now, but not then. So she's been praised for centering Black women as protagonists in her stories. She's disrupted gender norms. She rejects gender binaries. In the Parable series, Lauren Olamina goes as a man for much of the novel. Butler provides us with stories of Black women that are living with disabilities. She shifts how we look at what Megan O'Bourne calls injury and impurity. That values motherhood as a historically determined and embodied social identity and political position. So Butler's novels have been heralded for their accurate predictions of dystopian futures that many of us are currently living in. Nancy Jester asserted that Octavia Butler is both a heroine and a problem child. There are those who have found Octavia Butler to be problematic and essentializing. They've argued that she perpetuates harmful stereotypes of women, that she reduces them to mothers or Black Eves, Earth mothers, healers, teachers, and artists. And so she's not really like that. Butler has also been known to pair strong Black women with white men or young girls with older men. In Fledging, she has Shuri is a vampire who physically appears as a child, and she gets into the car and has a romantic sexual relationships with this older white man who is like in his 20s or 30s, and essentially it is predatory. That is grooming. And pedophilia and statutory rape. But she gets away with it because technically Shuri is a vampire who is hundreds of years old and is technically older than this white man that she gets into a relationship with as a vampire. This is the kind of writer Octavia Butler was. This is the kind of writing I was modeling, and that got me in a lot of trouble, right? And so I just watched a documentary on Judith Blume, and she was writing same for children in her children's books about masturbation and like teenagers having sex, and she was also seen as very problematic, right? And so this is what Octavia Butler's, you have to talk about that. Like, she does some really strange things. And even when Black women are paired with Black men, the characters are typically heterosexual, and the male gaze is centered. Although in the Parable series, Lauren explores her intimacy with other women, and Lauren's brother Mark is gay, although he's not out because of his role in the church. So I don't know if it's a spoiler alert, but Mark is a pastor in Christian America. He has a very high role, and he never ends up getting married. Like a lot of priests, he just chose not to get married. But for him, his reasoning for not getting married in the story, not to give it away, but I'm going to give it away, is he never wanted to act upon his what do Christians see homosexuality as? A curse, a disease, an illness, a abomination. He never wanted to act upon the abomination that he knew he was living, and so he never got married because he liked men, but he couldn't act on it, so he became a pastor to suppress his sexual desires. Which I think sometimes, this is a social commentary. You could think about priests who never get married, who end up touching young children then, right? And within the Catholic Church and in other churches. And so the social commentary is really brilliant, actually. And anyway, so additionally, but some of her stories are also, she has sanest moments, right? She labels those with mental illnesses that as some form of madness or crazy. Ableism slips in there as various points. In Talons is a child with Tourette syndrome who's beaten and killed to death because of their conditions, was considered a sign of possession by the devil. Again, you don't know. It's so Butler has written about fatphobic comments. Octavia Butler, the child with Tourette syndrome, got killed because the Christians saw it was possession by the devil. And so she's writing about fatphobic comments where like people are making fun of fat people. There's commentary that are really bad, that are really classist. So classism shows up against the working poor. Characters are grappling with homosexuality in the church. So there's like homophobia in there. It's not always clear if Octavia Butler explores these sentiments and narratives as social commentary. It's very clear that it's social commentary. That's how I read it. But again, I was just saying recently, this is why I stopped doing parody. Because sometimes you get to a point where you don't even know if it's parody or satire or social commentary. And to me, it's very obvious what Octavia Butler is doing. But for some people, especially those who don't like her writing because she's a queer woman, who just hate her because of her, people who could just automatically just can't stand her because of who she is, that don't and ever will not like her writing, you're going to look at her writing in a completely different way. You're going to look at it as predatory. You're going to look at her as a monster. You're going to look at her as perverted. You're going to look at her as a groomer and all of these negative things because you inherently do not like who and what she represents as a queer lesbian woman, right? And so you're going to miss that social commentary because you are who she's mocking and talking about. Anyways, so yeah, she's definitely has her problematic elements. But again, is she problematic, or is she intentionally writing about that in a way so we can get to look at the problematics of the world? So I'm going to end it there. Please like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, in solidarity. I'll probably be doing more posts in the next little while. My goal when I came into this year was to try to do a post a week. So that's, last year I think I had 53, 54 or something like that, which is once a week is what I try to go for. And I'm still going to keep to that because I have some stuff recorded for when I went away to take a break. I needed in May just to focus on my own mental wellness. And then June, it's just been going with the flow. And living life and taking care of chickens and dog sitting. And okay, take care, bye.